On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto our children.
I'm Dr. Carrie Manzo, and I'm an assistant professor of global studies here at Purchase College, and I'm chair of the general studies program. Don't know if we talked about this, but I'm a transgender man. Like many trans people, I think I have a lot of apprehension about the next 4 years in terms of the ways that transgender rights and, of course, rights of many other people in our country can be rolled back very easily. I remember growing up in a time in a state of Texas where I didn't have any legal rights. Having got to a place where I have those, losing them would be, quite distressing.
Hi, my name's Cecil. I came out when I was 12, and I got diagnosed with gender dysphoria by a psychologist pretty soon after. That allowed me to go on hormone blockers when I was 12. Then I wanted to start the process of going on hormones, which consisted of another psych evaluation from 2 different psychologists who could both agree that I was going through gender dysphoria that was severe enough that I would need to be on hormones at the age that I was, as well as a therapist letter. So I had to have my doctor, 2 psychologists, and my therapist to all agree on that, and then my parents as well. It was not an easy process at all. I had to cry to a million different strangers and medical professionals and be like, this is what I need. I had to tell my parents every single day, this is what I need. And people think that doctors push it on trans people, and that's totally not what it is. I had to deal with so many people being like, oh, you think this is what you're going through? And I had to be like, no, this is what I'm going through. Yeah.
How specifically did the selection make you feel?
Oh, God. My immediate thought was, holy shit, it's going to be so hard to get my HRT.
Yeah.
Because, I feel the main tactic that, Republicans have been taking against HRT is, oh, it's damaging for children. But, if you look at a lot of the legislation that's been proposed, a lot of it doesn't just have to do with children. It has to do with any way possible making it harder for people to get gender-affirming care, and, making it harder for people to get approved for HRT and for surgery. And they want to make the age not just above 18, but some people think it should be 25 or above. And you can see that the end goal isn't really about protecting children. It's about preventing trans people from getting gender-affirming care, because when trans people don't get gender-affirming care, you could consider that to be disablement. And so the disablement of an entire demographic of people seems to be their end goal. And that's a really scary thing, because I know what life was like for me before transitioning, and I can't go back to how it was before, and I can't imagine any other trans person would feel differently.
Of course. Yeah.
So the Transaction event here on campus is really about drawing attention to our campus issues around creating trans-affirming spaces and policies here at Purchase College. And of course, it is open to everyone, because what my students want is to be able to put the lived experience of trans people in front of the student body of allies, and also in front of faculty, staff, and administration. Things like, we've had a lot of discussion, and students have talked a lot about how our supports around campus are not yet designed to address the needs of trans students. For example, health services, how their intake forms and their way of relating to students and their ways of thinking about sexual health and sexual reproduction are very binary and very much based in cis biology, right? So if you're a trans man having a pregnancy scare on campus, are you comfortable going to health services if they don't understand you and your body, or it doesn't feel like they do?
it's really hard to get hormones, and that doesn't stop once you're prescribed them. Like, I used to be able to pick up my medications from the pharmacy and it would be no issue, but then they started IDing me for my medications that I was prescribed, and that only happens to me when I pick up my testosterone or my needles, not when I pick up any of my other medications. And it kind of exists to dehumanize you a little bit, because it kind of is like, oh, I gotta like take out my ID. Your ID might not have your correct name, it might not have your correct gender. So then like this person who like is looking at your medical history is also looking at your legal gender and your legal name, and you kind of have to like out yourself to a stranger whenever you want to get your hormones.
Is there anything that you want to talk about?
Look to your community resources and try and get them in connection with those. There are support groups, there's PFLAG, there's family and friends support groups all over the country, and getting your family and your friends in connection with them can be very helpful, because here's the other thing is it takes the burden off of you from doing all of the emotional support that they might need while their mind is changing, right? This country, and I've moved a few times, everywhere I go, I just go and find the community that's going to support me. And when you go to the community for support, you find that you end up giving support also. So yes, you're building the community by going to use it as a resource. So do it.
It's just people who have trans friends, like, it's kind of like your responsibility to make them make it known that they're loved. And I think just like really finding community is really important in general. Like, we're not powerless. There are things you can do with your friends, with the people you live near, with people who share the same identity as you. There are things you can do that make it not so impossible. And even just like having these conversations can be really empowering. Yeah, I actually was one of 3 leaders of the Tacoma, Washington chapter of the Sunrise Movement for about a year. And stuff like that was really awesome, because we got to like show up to like city hall meetings and say, hey, this is something that's damaging our local environment. Like, people would actually listen, because it's much more manageable to say like, this is a vulnerable ecosystem in our surrounding area that needs protection. We did a lot of things like voter registration, like mass voter registration at like events we would hold, and distributing like food and other supplies to people who needed it.